You know how Ryu Hayabusa from Ninja Gaiden is always the one that saves the day? Well, let's imagine what would happen if Ryu didn't ever exist. How big of an impact would this have on the series, and who would still be around? With how powerful Ryu Hayabusa is, it's hard to imagine how things would go if he didn't exist. So I went through the Ninja Gaiden trilogy and started to write down what I would expect if I turned on Ninja Gaiden and Ryu wasn't there. Let's say I didn't get far, so we decided to make this video instead, because you can't really play the game without Ryu. You can't. Anyway, to do this and add a narrative around it, we need to build out how the situation would happen, which is actually a very small change. Let's start with Joe Hayabusa and Ryu's mother before Ryu Hayabusa was even conceived. We don't really know or hear anything about Ryu's mother, but we do know Joe, who at this point is the only dragon ninja in the world and understands the responsibility that their lineage has. So Joe would have a goal early on to have children, so that he's able to pass on the power of the divine dragons within his veins. So let's say that for some reason Joe and his wife are not having any luck with getting pregnant. This would put Joe in a difficult situation, as he would have an incredible responsibility to the world and wanting to remain loyal to Ryu's mother. First, let's explain just the level of responsibility that the Dragon Ninja have. See, the Hayabusa village is located near Mount Fuji, because of how many dangerous evils are typically within the forests. This originates all the way back to Nioh, where we learn about the dragon lineage and how they were some of the most powerful of the ninjas in Japan. Then with this, they have the responsibility of addressing the evils that come out of there. So obviously, yeah, the world needs a dragon lineage around to protect them. So to go back to Ryu's mother, one thing to point out is that we don't know the circumstances of Ryu's mother not being around, and we can only speculate. A possibility that comes to mind is that it may be possible that she died when giving birth to Ryu or during a ninja war between the Hayabusa clan and the Black Spider Ninja clan. Again, speculation. But I am of the opinion that Ryu's mother wouldn't just leave and we never hear anything about it. And this is one of the things that keeps Joe focused on becoming even more powerful. As in Ninja Gaiden Black, where Joe is away to train in the sacred forest, it is likely that Joe never had the opportunity to leave the Hayabusa village because of this. And once Ryu was strong enough, he felt he was able to entrust the Hayabusa village with his son so he could go perform this training. This would add complexity to the events leading up to the Dark Dragon Blade incident from even starting. Mirai would not want to start the events with the Dark Dragon Blade, where he originally reaches out to the Vigor Emperor, which exposes the location of the Dark Dragon Blade. And it is what caused Doku to make his way through the village to retrieve the blade. For Mirai to feel comfortable enough to essentially start Ninja Gaiden Black, he is likely going to want Joe away from the village. Remember, Mirai's original goal was to have the Vigor Emperor retrieve the blade, have Ryu seek vengeance, and empower the Dark Dragon Blade with the death he is causing, and retrieve the blade for Mirai so that he can wield it with its power. This all can't happen if Joe is successful in stopping Doku in the Hayabusa village or dies against Doku. But Mirai is smart and would likely come up with something to force Joe to respond somewhere with some sort of evil. Keep in mind, Mirai had history with the Hayabusa clan where he would eventually leave to start the Shadow Ninja clan. We don't get to find out specifically why he wasn't part of the clan anymore, but I imagine it had something to do with his interest in power, but in evil relics specifically, where it's likely that the true intent of Mirai wasn't revealed at the time. So Mirai originally was patient on the Dark Dragon Blade events, where Ryu was in his early 20s when he was protecting the village. With this, it's likely that Mirai would know that Joe has a fear of not producing the next generation of the Dragon Ninja, and Mirai would use this to his advantage. I'm of the opinion that Mirai would report the location of the Dark Dragon Blade to the Emperor and could look at setting up a kidnapping of Joe's wife to kind of kick things off, to pull Joe away from the Hayabusa village before Doku arrives, which would allow even the smallest amount of time for the Dark Dragon Blade to be retrieved. At this point, Joe would have the responsibility of retrieving the Dark Dragon Blade, but here are some of the big differences between Ryu with what he knows and Joe. See, Ryu, while incredibly powerful, didn't seem to know about his dragon lineage blood, where he tells Rachel that his strength comes from training and not some curse in his blood, which is literally what provides Ryu with so much strength. along with the fact that Muramasa had to educate Ryu on the Eye of the Dragon, where, when it's combined with the Dragon Sword, would transform into an incredibly powerful version, which we know as the true Dragon Sword, which Ryu was not aware of until very late in Ninja Gaiden Black. So, with the fact that Kuroha would not be the Shrine Maiden at this time, because this is very, very early, this would be before most of the characters we know about are even born, whoever was the previous Shrine Maiden would be tasked with protecting the Eye of the Dragon and the Dark Dragon Blade, where Doku originally didn't even care about the Eye of the Dragon, as he killed Kuroha and took the Dark Dragon Blade before leaving the Hayabusa village. So Joe isn't going to mess around, and we'll quickly find out from Mirai who the attacker was in the village, again, because Mirai is evil, and wants Joe to make the evil blade more powerful so that Mirai can try to retrieve it later. Once Joe knows where he needs to head out to, he will be equipped with the Dragon Sword and the Eye of the Dragon for when he decides to unleash the insane power of the true Dragon Sword. Keep in mind that this is all happening following the event of Joe not having a child, and individuals like Rachel or Alma, neither of them would be born or even babies. So in Tairon, Joe would eventually find the monastery that Rachel ended up finding and learn about the existence of Ishitaros and Nietzsche, who are the ancient fiends that serve the Emperor. Eventually, Joe's journey would lead him to find Doku. This fight would go incredibly different compared to Ryu's fight, where Joe would be able to transform his sword into the true Dragon Sword, and not only would he defeat Doku just like his son, but Doku's spirit isn't escaping. Because of the difference between the different version of the Dragon Sword that Joe has compared to Ryu, where Doku's spirit escapes for Ryu to kill him later after equipping the true Dragon Sword. He will also learn that Doku no longer has the Dark Dragon Blade and that the Emperor wields it. This will force Joe to continue through, eventually face off against Ishitaros, Nietzsche, and Marbus, and Joe will defeat all of them. Now, this is where things will start to change, with affecting everything else down the road. The Vigor Emperor is incredibly powerful, and when fighting Ryu, it came back up in another form. This obviously frustrated Ryu because everyone he had fought against up to this point was defeated rather swiftly. Here, I don't believe Joe defeats the Emperor, and it's simply because the Emperor is wielding the Dark Dragon Blade and is already powerful enough to have all the Greater Fiends report into it, and because of what we see in the prologue to Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2. So in the main series, after Ninja Gaiden Black and Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword, Joe returns from his training and goes to help Ryu against the Vampire Fiend. However, with the additional training that Joe took, he gets himself bitten by the vampire, and Ryu needs to finish the Fiend himself. Now, I will say this, at this point Joe didn't have the Dragon Sword, but that doesn't mean that Joe should have taken a bite from the vampire. This is what led to Joe being bandaged up at the beginning of Ninja Gaiden 2, and there is significant reason to believe that the Emperor is leaps and bounds more powerful than the vampire fiend Crimson. Specifically because Ryu did struggle a bit with the Emperor, and the same Ryu completely bodied Crimson. This may be harsh on my side, but there isn't enough here from the Vampire Fiend to tell me that Joe, without his training, would be able to hold a candle to the Vigor Emperor, meaning that the dragon lineage would essentially end with Joe dying here. This would put Mirai in a very difficult spot, as he obviously wants the Dark Dragon Blade, and now he doesn't have any great way to retrieve it. This leads to my theory that Mirai and Elizabeth work together for Mirai to eventually be capable of handling the Dark Dragon Blade while retaining his sanity. Then Elizabeth would be able to retrieve the demon statue, because Marbus and the Emperor originally had the demon statue. A couple things here. See, Elizabeth doesn't really care about Mirai, and with Mirai's plans reducing the Vigor Emperor's power to just itself, she may work with the current leader of the Black Spider Ninja Clan, which Genshin is a part of, but not leading at this point. So Elizabeth's best chance is to ally with the Black Spider Ninja Clan, leave Mirai as Genshin hates Mirai, and go to face off against the Emperor themselves. Another option is for Elizabeth to retrieve the Dark Dragon Stone as an alternative for her for more power. Obviously, she would have to be careful not to awaken the Dark Dragon, because there is no one around that can take on that dragon. If Elizabeth planned this out before the Emperor is able to regain its forces, then I envision her going the Dragonstone route with the Black Spider Ninja Clan, and with her being the Fiend Shrine Priestess, she would be more than capable of empowering herself like Ishitaros does in Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword, or use it to awaken some of her greater fiend allies like Alexei, Volf, or Zidonius. Since the Archfiend is sealed in Mount Fuji and requires a ritual, I'm going to assume someone at the level of the Archfiend can't be brought back by the Dragonstones alone, since the Emperor was dead, not sealed, and needs the additional fiends to be a sacrifice. With Elizabeth cutting a deal with the Black Spider Ninja Clan that they can have the Dark Dragonblade as long as she can have the demon statue, this would work out to their favor to be able to fight the Emperor and its remaining forces. It would be a rough fight, but I believe the Emperor would lose. The Dark Dragonblade would turn into tea to save the current leader of the Black Spider Ninja Clan. Genshin would eventually get revenge on Mirai as he would try his hardest to retrieve the blade. Elizabeth would be successful in restoring the Archfiend like she was in Ninja Gaiden 2, and the whole world would plummet into chaos. Then the LOA from Ninja Gaiden 3 would never be able to start their operations simply because they were just trying to survive, and wouldn't be able to handle 4 Greater Fiends, Dogredai, and the Archfiend himself. If you enjoyed this What If, make sure you subscribe and check out more. Appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.